Hi students, I wanted to explain to you the underpainting that we're going to be doing. Now that we've done the color wheel, scales, and wet and wet on the scales, and then that was controlled, we're going to do a little bit of wet and wet that is a little bit out of control on purpose. After we did that, we did the glazing, which is another even wash project that's controlled. This one's going to be a little bit stranger to understand, but it's a lot of fun. So I want you to go around your house and find a few objects, different sizes, different shapes, different colors, some of them bright colors, some of them neutral, and some of them white. I found this red onion. It's so huge it looks like it was genetically engineered. But I'm going to put this in the still life here. You won't be able to see it from my eye level, but I have these little tomatoes, very bright colors and fun. Kind of a yellow orange and a red. And then I have this white kind of a bottle with different yellows on it, little pale lemony yellows. And then I have this ultramarine blue flashlight, which is really bright. In our palettes we don't use phthalo and cerulean yet. We're using just ultramarine, which is a super beautiful royal blue. So you don't want to pick colors that are ones you don't have. Something like this, it's hard to see, but something like this green, it's very bright and weird. It's called phthalo green. We don't have those in our palette because we mixed with only the regular 3 primaries. So if you have one of those watercolor sets that has weird colors like cerulean and phthalo and magenta, don't use those. We only want to use ultramarine blue, cadmium red medium, cadmium yellow medium, and black in our palette. Later on you can add that stuff into your palette, but for now the blue we use is ultramarine, the red we use is the warm, etc. So I'm just going to set these up a little, and then I have this one kind of pretty subtle pinky goldy color. I'm going to put that in there too. And you want to arrange it so that it's compositionally interesting, has variety, unity, as any composition would. And then we're going to paint it, but we're going to paint it in a weird way. We're going to paint it with a giant brush and just blob it into a pool of water. The paper that I have has marks on it, so just ignore that. I'm just using a piece of paper that I happen to have. Actually, if I move it like this, you won't have to see a lot of it. So what you want to do is stick that whole thing in the sink. It's hard to think that that's normal, but if you can't get to the sink, you can pour water onto it. You might want to do this outside or a place where you can just get water everywhere. It's okay if you leave a couple little bits uncovered, but the bulk of it should be dripped on, swiped on, soaked on. Even if you soak it in the sink, parts will dry, which is really neat. It just adds to it later. But looking at the still life, you want to loosely block in gesturally. It's like a mass gesture. And of course decide if it's horizontal or vertical. And you want to get an estimate of these colors, and quite boldly. I know usually we don't use a lot of water, but this color here came out really quickly and good for the giant onion. So I add a little more, a little more, a little more. If it's a neutral, add some black, but I want to kind of exaggerate that color a little bit. It kind of matches. So instead of drawing it detailed, I'm going to literally block it where I think it is. And if it's too light, put more pigment. It's okay if it moves everywhere. That's what it is. I'm going to do the still life up in here so you can see. I'm feeling like it's got a little bit of brown or neutral in it, so I'll put that in there too. But you don't want to shape it. The minute it starts to form a hard edge or a shape like this over here, it's not good. So throw more water if that happens. For my ultramarine, I'm switching to a smaller flat brush. I'm going to saturate this in ultramarine. So you want to make sure before you start that your palette has all the colors in it. I'm switching to a palette that's got that beautiful ultramarine over here. So I'm going to use that. With watercolor, you always want to set up ahead because it's such a timing thing. So here's my flashlight. Boom. That's it. It's a little crooked, so I'll add some more. Boom. But see how there's no hard edges? If there is a hard edge there, just put a little water. Because what we want is for this to be messy, loose, moving together, unexpected, because we're going to come back to it the next day, because this thing has to dry overnight. Next to the onion, I have this beautiful yellow-orange tomato. It's small, so I don't want to make it too big. There's that, there's another one there, and there's another one there. Again, add water if it gets weird. You can also go like that. We want it to be weird and messy and loose and not defined. We're going to leave a blank here because there's white. There's one more, let's see, another tomato there. If it's too dark, add red. But again, with this, there's so much water, it's kind of hard to make it too dark. And we're doing a swoop of things. I'm going to try to match that silvery gold color over here underneath the white. And it's like that, kind of. Real quick. See, I got a dry edge there. Throw some water. So this is the dry kind of edge we don't want. That just happened to be a paper had started before. So this is it. Set it aside, pick it up, carry it over to the floor or to the wall. Not the wall, but counter. We don't want to hang it vertically. It'll get a little too weird. But we can move it a little. That's one thing. It's okay if you lose it. But the other thing is, check on it every couple of minutes. See what's happening. Because sometimes blotting is helpful. Like here's my Bounty towel. When you blot, you don't rub, you don't go over and over. You squeeze it into a shape. You press. You hold it down with a lot of force, almost as hard as you can. And you lift. Now in that case, there was so much water it's hard to see. So I'm going to do another one here where the white thing is. Press. Lift, so you can see how a little silhouette happens. If you see a highlight maybe, press, lift. Very gentle. Now this whole thing is done for now. This needs to be left alone. What I'm going to do after it's completely done, while it's drying, I'm going to draw the still life. So I'm going to draw it as if this doesn't exist. This is one of the more abstract projects that's hard to convey online, but hopefully this will help. This is going to become beautiful as it sits. The pigment separates, all kinds of things happen. You get these, what we call cauliflower edges that only happen in watercolor. We get little lost and found lines, moments where the paper dried. You get little flecks where the white becomes positive space. All kinds of cool stuff happens. But while this is drying, we put it to the side. You can even pour off excess. Like I had a lot of red, so I'm pouring that off. It'll help it dry faster. But you can see it's starting to get cool, but that's not pulled up paper that you see. That's dried pigment that was just in my old palette, and that's fine. That's kind of a cool thing too. I like what's happening here, but let's give it a chance to dry. Then, while it's drying, you're gonna get a piece of paper that is the same size. So, piece of newsprint, piece of sketch, and we're going to actually draw the thing. You want to draw it to fit that area that you did. If you don't have paper, you can draw it on the back of anything. Piece of cardboard. Usually people have sketch paper at home. Poster board, whatever. We're just practicing again. And again, you can transfer this with either carbon or the handmade method. Carbon is great only because you can draw it really well and then transfer it and the drawing looks great. Actually, I'm standing. I'm going to draw it the way I see it standing. You can kind of see. So I want to real loosely, largely draw the onion. Real messy. Always draw the whole thing even when it's tucked behind. It's kind of an interesting vantage. I was going to sit down and draw it, but I've got this on an angle, I've got this red thing, and then I've got my speaker thing over here, right off the edge. When that other thing is dry, I'm going to superimpose this on top. It's not supposed to line up with where the blobs were before of color. It's almost like you forget what that other one was completely. And only when you lightly draw this are we going to do something very similar. We're going to put a horizon line. And I'll show you what we're going to be doing. It's just going to be superimposed on that other one. The great thing about these drawings and having done an underpainting is you don't need to do much. And I'm going to pick whatever color I want and come right to the edge of this and shape my onion in any color. I'm not meaning to do it brown, but that's just how it came out. And then I'm shaping around my... You will have a horizon line. And you can always make it an oval if it looks weird as a straight line. Just use a T-square to make sure it lines up all the way across. And then I'm going to paint around this. So I'm just painting the negative space and using a big brush. Any color you want in the back. You just want to use one that's already in the picture. And that'll be that for the back. A lot of times when you do that, it's done. It all depends on your other picture. If this thing turns out gorgeous, you want to save those bits. You don't want to paint over areas that look great. You want to paint over the boring areas. But by having a good drawing here, I'm just going to do it darker so you can see. I would never draw that dark. Onion, flashlight, whatever like that. Something else that sometimes is called for here is, let's cover this. Is what we call the warm drip down. Drip down is when you hang it on the wall or hold it up and you put just water underneath. Not all over, just underneath. Strategic areas with a big brush. And then you take a smaller brush, pick a warm hue, and place the warm hue into the water. And then lift it up. So you have this gorgeous drip down. It's okay if it goes over something, but you want to have it be warm, because warm colors come forward and cool go back. And you can actually use a substantial amount of pigment, which is very, frowned upon in watercolor, but in this case, you can do it because there's water in there. And it's so soft, by the time it hits the water, you don't know it's that saturated. So this is the layer that you're going to do on top of that really cool wash underpainting. And always leaving white is strategic. The minute you lose the paper's white, it's over. So that's why we're doing very gentle, strategic, leaving white. And most of the times in this project, no one even fills these. They might call for something, but not a lot. And I will look for this video I have of the end result. But I want you to see the steps. So you have this step, which is a sense of the still life. And when it's fully dry, you actually draw the still life and superimpose it on there. It's a gorgeous effect. And I'll show you some finished projects of it. Enjoy!